Chapter 1. In the darkness of eternal night, where the stars blinked like cold eyes over the vast domains of the Imperium, Captain Elarion of the Ultramarines stood upon the bridge of the battlecruiser Aurelian. His armor, blue and gold, bore the scars of countless battlefields, and his gaze was as unyielding as adamantium. Around him servitors whirred, and tactical screens flickered with data from the ship's sensors. They had arrived at the planet Xerion Prime, a world once a thriving colony, now threatened by a shadow from the unknown. "Report, Lieutenant Vexus," Elarion commanded, his voice echoing through the vox grill of his helm. The lieutenant, a veteran with scarred features, pointed at the holographic projections. "The Tyranid fleet is closing in, Captain. Hive Fleet Leviathan has broken through the outermost defense line. They are more numerous than expected, biomorphs, carnifexes, genestealers. Our ground forces report infiltration within the cities." Ilarion's heart beat steady, trained by centuries of war. He felt the tension rise, like a storm gathering strength. "The Emperor protects," he muttered, a prayer that was as much an order as an oath. "Prepare for landing, we will meet them on the ground." The descent was chaos. Thunderhawk gunships roared through the atmosphere, shaken by turbulence and by enemy spores raining down like toxic storms. Inside the transport craft sat Ilarion's squad, 10 brothers-in-arms, each one a living legend. Brother Sealers, the heavy weapons specialist, checked his devastator cannon with a sigh. "These insects will be crushed beneath our boots," he said, though his tone carried an undertone of unease. When the doors opened, they were met by a world in turmoil. Xerion Prime's surface was a labyrinth of ruins and jungles, now alive with Tyranid forms. The air buzzed with wings, and the ground trembled beneath hordes of termagants swarming forward. Elarion ignited his power sword, its energy field crackling blue. "For Ultramarine, for the Emperor!" The first wave struck them like a tidal surge. Genestealers burst from the shadows, their claws gleaming in the dim light. Brother Marcus, standing nearest, raised his bolt gun and unleashed a volley. Explosions tore through the enemy, but one genestealer leapt past, raking its talons across his shoulder plate. Blood sprayed, yet Marcus stood firm, swearing an oath of vengeance. Elarion swept his sword in a wide arc, decapitating 2 creatures at once. He felt their alien hatred, a psychic pulse pressing against his mind. The tension mounted, each breath was a battle, each step a choice between life and death. The squad formed a circle, their bolters thundering in rhythm with their hearts. The enemy was relentless, but so were they. In the distance, roars echoed from larger beasts, carnifexes crashing through the vegetation. Elarion knew this was only the beginning. They had to hold the line until reinforcements arrived. But in the grim universe of Warhammer 40,000, hope was a luxury, and death a constant companion. Chapter 2. The ground beneath Captain Elarion's boots trembled with the Tyranids' advance. The ruins of Xerion Prime cast long, menacing shadows in the glow of burning buildings, and the air was thick with the smoke of plasma fire and the acrid stench of Xeno's blood. The Ultramarines had repelled the first wave, but the cost was steep. Brother Marcus lay wounded, his armor shattered, and several servitors had been reduced to smoldering wrecks. Elarion cast a glance toward the sky, where flashes of orbital bombardment split the clouds. Reinforcements were on their way, but time itself was an enemy as deadly as the Tyranids. "Vexus, status of the defense line," Elarion barked through the vox, his voice sharp above the chaos. Lieutenant Vexus, holding position at a collapsed wall, replied in a strained voice. "The southern flank holds, but we have zoanthropes moving through the mist. They are trying to break our mines. Dreadnought Cassius has engaged a carnifex, but we need more firepower," Elarion swore under his breath. Zoanthropes, Tyranid psychic monstrosities, could warp reality and shatter a warrior's will. He signaled to Brother Sealers, whose devastator cannon still smoked from overheating. "With me. We take out the zoanthropes before they reach the line." The squad advanced through the ruins, their boots crunching on shattered stone and alien corpses. The sounds of battle were overwhelming. The thunder of bolters, claws scraping against metal, and the inhuman shrieks of the Tyranids. Suddenly, the mist parted, and 3 zoanthropes drifted forward, their grotesque, swollen craniums pulsing with psychic energy. The air rippled around them, and Elarion felt a chilling pressure in his mind, as though an unseen hand sought to crush his very soul. "The Emperor protects," he roared, more to steel himself than his brothers. He hurled forward, power sword raised. The first zoanthrope turned its vacant face toward him, and a wave of psychic force slammed into him. Elarion staggered, vision flickering, but his will was forged of steel. He struck, his blade cutting through the creature's carapace as though it were paper. It exploded in a cascade of ichor, and the remaining 2 turned upon him with fury. Sealers unleashed fire, his cannons spitting a storm of shells. 1 zoanthrope detonated, but the last answered with a telekinetic shockwave that hurled Sealers backward. Elarion saw his brother crash to the ground, but there was no time to hesitate. He charged, ducked beneath another psychic strike, and drove his sword straight through the creature's core. It collapsed with a soul-rending scream, but the victory was short-lived. A roar thundered from the jungle, and a carnifex charged forward, its massive claws glistening with blood. Behind it swarmed termagants, their bioweapons spewing acid. Elarion realized they were surrounded. He opened the Vox. "Cassius, we need you now." From the ruins came a mechanical roar, and Dreadnought Cassius emerged, his massive frame a symbol of ultramarine resolve. His autocannons thundered, staggering the carnifex beneath a hail of fire. Yet the Tyranids did not relent. For every creature slain, 2 more surged forth. Elarion raised his blade and led his brothers in a desperate counterattack, his heart pounding with the adrenaline of a battle where each second might be their last. Chapter 3: Smoke and ash swirled around Captain Elarion and his Ultramarines as the battle on Xerion Prime reached new heights of madness. The ruin they defended was a fragile bastion, encircled by Tyranid hordes that seemed without end. Dreadnought Cassius stood like a colossus amidst the chaos, his autocannons spitting death in a rhythmic cacophony, while the carnifex before him bellowed in fury. Its carapace was cracked, but the beast was far from defeated. Elarion felt the ground tremble beneath its massive strides, every breath he drew tasting of blood and scorched flesh. "Brother Cassius, focus your fire on its joints," Elarion shouted through the Vox, his voice barely audible above the storm of war. He ducked as a swarm of termagants fired their bioweapons, acid sizzling against his armor. His power sword flashed as he cut down a creature that hurled itself at him, its claws mere inches from his face. Adrenaline surged, but so did the weight of exhaustion, not of the body, but the gnawing burden of knowing that every misstep could cost them everything. Cassius roared a battle hymn through his amplified speakers, his weapons obeying Elarion's command. Shells tore into the carnifex's knee joints, and the beast staggered with a scream that made the air vibrate. But from the shadows, a new terror emerged, a lictor, its chameleonic hide shimmering as it leapt toward Cassius from behind. Elarion reacted instantly, hurling a cracked grenade and charging to intercept. The explosion blasted the creature back, and it shrieked, but it was fast, too fast. Its claws raked across Elarion's chest plate, burning pain lancing through him as the adamantium held, barely. "Sealers, cover me," he roared. Brother Sealers, recovered from the zoanthrope's psychic strike, raised his devastator cannon and unleashed a storm of fire. The lictor was torn apart mid-leap, but the cost was time they did not have. The horde pressed forward, and in the distance came a new, dreadful sound, a psychic scream heralding the arrival of a Hive tyrant. Elarion felt its presence like ice on his soul. The Hive tyrant was the will of the swarm incarnate, a general and warrior in one. If they could not stop it, their line would shatter. He gathered his brothers with a gesture. "We advance on the tyrant. No retreat, no mercy." The squad moved as one, their bolters and plasma weapons cutting light into the darkness. Termagants fell in heaps, but with every step forward, the resistance grew fiercer. A swarm of gargles descended from the sky, their wings buzzing like a plague. Brother Marcus, despite his wounds, raised his bolt gun and shot several down, but one landed on his back and drove its talons deep. Elarion turned, cleaved the creature apart, and hauled Marcus back to his feet. "Stand firm, brother, we are not finished yet." When they reached a clearing among the ruins, they saw it, the Hive Tyrant. It towered above the battlefield, its scything talons gleaming, its eyes burning with hatred. Around it pulsed an aura of dread, and Elarion felt the resolve of his brothers falter. He raised his sword and shouted, "For the Emperor." For Ultramarine, his voice was a beacon in the darkness, and his brothers answered with a thunderous roar. The battle was not over, but it had only just begun. Chapter 4, the battlefield of Xerion Prime, was a maelstrom of death and devastation. The Hive Tyrant loomed as a primal force at the heart of the chaos, its massive form a living embodiment of tyrannid malice. Its scything talons cut through the air with lethal precision, and its psychic presence was a storm threatening to crush the will of the Ultramarines. Captain Elarion felt its pressure against his mind, but his faith in the Emperor was a shield stronger than any adamantium. He tightened his grip on his power sword, its energy field crackling in the flickering glow of burning ruins. "Brothers, focus fire on the tyrant," he commanded, his voice cutting through the din of battle. Brother Sealers raised his devastator cannon, its barrels glowing with heat, and unleashed a salvo that slammed into the tyrant's chest. The beast roared, but the damage was shallow. Its armor was as thick as a battle tank's. Dreadnought Cassius advanced with thunderous steps, his autocannons blazing, but the Hive Tyrant moved with unnatural speed, ducking aside before hurling itself forward. One massive claw struck Cassius, metal shrieking as it tore open part of his sarcophagus. Elarion saw the opening. "Marcus, Vexus, flank it, now," he charged, blade raised, while his brothers moved in flawless coordination. Marcus, wounded yet unbroken, fired a volley from his bolt gun, while Vexus hurled a melter grenade that detonated in a blast of searing heat. The tyrant screamed, one arm burned to ash, but answered with a psychic shockwave that hurled Vexus to the ground, his armor smoking. Elarion closed the distance, ducked beneath a sweeping talon, and struck with all his might. His sword bit deep into the tyrant's flank, black ichor spraying across his armor, but the creature was far from slain. It turned, eyes burning with malice, and unleashed another wave of psychic power. Elarion stumbled, his vision filled with nightmarish visions, his brothers torn apart, Xerion Prime drowned in tyrannid spores. He fell to his knees, battling the terror, whispering, "The Emperor protects." Sealers' shout dragged him back to reality. "Captain, move!" Another salvo from the devastator cannon hammered into the tyrant, and Elarion hurled himself aside as the beast lunged. He rolled to his feet, heart pounding, and saw Cassius rise again, his mechanical body sparking and torn, yet unbroken. "For Ultramarine," bellowed the dreadnought, seizing the tyrant's leg in his iron claws, holding it in place. Elarion seized the moment. He charged, clambered onto the tyrant's back, and drove his blade straight through its neck. The beast screamed, a sound that echoed across the battlefield before collapsing in a writhing heap of severed limbs. But the victory was bitter. Around them the tyrannids still swarmed, and the vox crackled, reinforcements were delayed. He looked to his brothers, their armor bloodied and broken, yet their eyes still burned with resolve. "We hold the line," he said, his voice steady despite the pain in his body. "For the Emperor, for Ultramarine." The squad gathered around him, ready to face the next wave. The battle was not over, but they were Ultramarines, and they would fight until their last breath. Epilogue: Xerion Prime lay in ruins, its soil soaked with blood and ichor. The Hive Tyrant was dead, yet the tyrannid swarms did not retreat. They would return, as they always did. Captain Elarion stood among his brothers, their armor scarred, their numbers diminished. Reinforcements had arrived too late, but the Ultramarines had held the line. He cast one final glance across the battlefield, sword still in hand. "For the Emperor," he whispered, and his brothers echoed his words. In this grim universe, their war was eternal, but their faith remained unbroken.